Hey guys, in this month's Historical Fiction 101, I'm going to be sharing with you some upcoming releases in the historical fiction genre from January to June of 2023. So you guys, as always, I do these videos, I find about 20 books that I'm going to share with you guys, and yeah, the historical fiction genre is massive, yeah guys, and the 20 books that I just randomly chose for this list are all ones that kind of just personally were speaking to me and struck my interest. And there's so many books out there in this genre that if the books on this list are not up your alley, I'm sure there's others that you will find much more appealing. I definitely recommend going to Goodreads and going to the lists category and typing in historical fiction 2023, and then yeah, that will give you a big huge menu of books in the genre that people have kind of put on that list and whatnot. So yeah, let's get going with this video, you guys. As I said, I have 20 books that I just randomly kind of put in here that are all being released sometime between January to June of 2023, and I'm going to have my computer right here in front of me, so if you see me looking down, that's what I'm looking down at. I'm going to be reading off the synopsises for you, and yeah, I recommend putting your Goodreads up and adding these books to your Goodreads if any of them sound really good. First up, A Noble Cunning, The Countess and the Tower by Patricia Bernstein. It says that this is based on the true story of Winifred Maxwell, who was a Catholic in anti-Catholic England, but it looks like this is not really totally taking her story. It looks like it's a very heavily fictionalized version of her true story. So yeah, this takes place in Scotland, 1716. Traveling alone through a frightful snowstorm, Beth Ann is desperate to get to London, where her husband languishes in the Tower of London. As the date of Gavin's beheading rapidly approaches, Beth Ann has only her wits and her women friends to support her against King George. Will she be able to free Gavin? Will she even be allowed to see him? Ooh, sounds great. Atalanta by Jennifer Saint. When a daughter is born to the king of Arcadia, she brings only disappointment. Left exposed on a mountainside, the defenseless infant Atalanta is left to the mercy of a passing mother bear and raised alongside the cubs under the protective eye of the goddess Artemis. Swearing that she will prove her worth alongside the famed heroes of Greece, Atalanta leaves her forest to join Jason's band of Argonauts. But can she carve out her own place in the legends and in a world made for men? Ooh, this sounds great. This is like a piece of Greek mythology that I'm not familiar with. It seems like so many authors are so focused on like Greek mythology when it comes to like the fall of Troy and doing things set in like the Odyssey. So yeah, either the Iliad or the Odyssey, so yeah, this is a part of Greek mythology that I'm not entirely familiar with. I have absolutely no idea what's going to happen here. So that sounds great. The City Between the Bridges, 1794 by Nicholas Notokdog. And this is actually, I didn't realize this until I kind of started looking at this more deeply. This is actually book 2 from a book called The Wolf and the Watchman, which I do own that book, but I have yet to read it. And I had no idea this was actually a sequel to that book. So I definitely got to make sure I pick this up so I can like binge them together. So yeah, this takes place in Stockholm, 1794. A young nobleman, Eric Three Roses, that's his name, Eric Three Roses, he languishes in a hospital as the rest of the city claims that he belongs in a madhouse. Riddled with guilt, he writes down the memories of his lost love, his beautiful wife, who died on their wedding night. Oh no. The young woman's mother also mourns her death, and desperate for justice, begs for help from the only person who will listen to her. Jean-Michel Cardell, the one-armed watchman, but she isn't the only person seeking him out. Emile, the younger brother to the brilliant lawyer and detective Cecile Wing, finds the watchman to demand his late brother's pocket watch back. Instead, Cardell enlists Emile's help to discover what really happened at the Three Roses estate that dreaded wedding night. Ooh, sounds great, you guys. I'm not quite sure if this actually really connects to that other book, or if just one specific character kind of carries over, because it almost sounds like the character who's the watchman, because since the other book is called The Wolf and the Watchman, it sounds like whoever the watchman character is, it sounds like that's the only character kind of crossing over between the books, it sounds like, because this sounds like, the plot sounds like its own separate thing. Clayton Nestra by Constanza Casati? You were born to a king, but you marry a tyrant. You stand by helplessly as he sacrifices your child to placate the gods. You watch him wage war on a foreign shore, and you comfort yourself with violent thoughts of your own, because this was not the first offense against you. This was not the life you ever deserved, and this will not be your undoing. Slowly, you plot. But when your husband returns in triumph, you become a woman with a choice. Acceptance or vengeance. Infamy follows both, so you bide your time and force the gods' hands in the game of retribution, for you understand something long ago that the others never did. If power isn't given to you, you have to take it for yourself. Ooh. I do like the story of Clytemnestra, because she was married to King Agamemnon, who went to Troy to go, get Helen of Troy back for his brother and whatnot, if you know the story. And yeah, Clytemnestra, she's pretty pissed off with Agamemnon when he comes back from the war, guys, if you know your Greek mythology. I'm kind of looking forward to this because last year I read Electra by Jennifer Saint. I read Electra by Jennifer Saint, and that had a lot of Clytemnestra's story in that as well, and I just wasn't really entirely impressed with that book, so I'm kind of hoping maybe this book will do a little better justice with her story and whatnot. Coronation Year by Jennifer Robson. It is Coronation Year 1953, and a new queen is about to be crowned. The people of London are in a mood to celebrate, none more so than the residents of the Blue Lion Hotel. Edie Howard, owner and operator of the Floundering Blue Lion, has found the miracle she needs on Coronation Day. Queen Elizabeth and her gold coach will pass by the hotel's front door, allowing Edie to charge a fortune for rooms and, barring disaster, save her beloved home from financial ruin. Edie's luck might just be turning, all thanks to a young queen about her own age. Stella Donati, a young Italian photographer and Holocaust survivor, has come to live at the Blue Lion while she takes up a coveted position at Picture Weekly magazine. London, in celebration mode, feels like a different world to her as she learns the ins and outs of her new profession. Stella discovers a purpose and direction that honor her past and bring hope for her future. James Geddes, a war hero and gifted artist, has struggled to make his mark in a world that disdains his Indian ancestry. At the Blue Lion, though, he is made to feel welcome and worthy, yet even as his friendship with Edie deepens, he begins to suspect that something is badly amiss at his new home. When anonymous threats focused on Coronation Day, the Blue Lion and even the Queen herself disrupt their mood of happy optimism. Edie and her friends must race to uncover the truth, save their home, and expose those who seek to erase the joy and promise of Coronation Year. This sounds like really charming. You guys, this sounds like a really charming British book. I'm definitely going to pick this up. It sounds so good. Essex Dogs by Dan Jones. And this is a book that actually was released last year, if I'm not mistaken, but it's just going to be coming to the United States, being released in the United States in February, it looks like. And yet, Dan Jones, you guys, I freaking love Dan Jones. He is such a wonderful historian. It's like, I wish more historians wrote historical fiction, you guys, because I feel like they all have like a really unique perspective about stuff, because they actually have really thoroughly engaged in the historical topics that they're interested in. So I'm definitely really curious to see Dan Jones write a historical fiction book, as he has written non-fiction books. So I'm really curious about how he's going to play with historical fiction and whatnot. So yeah, this takes place in July 1346. 10 men land on the beaches of Normandy. They call themselves the Essex Dogs, an unruly platoon of archers and men-at-arms led by a battle-scarred captain whose best days are behind him. The fight for the throne of the largest kingdom in Western Europe has begun. Heading ever deeper into enemy territory, Goodreads messed up this name. Goodreads messed up this name on here, and I can't even read what the name is. This character, this band of brothers knows they are off to fight a battle that will forge nations and shape the very fabric of human lives. But first, they must survive a bloody war in which rules are abandoned and chivalry itself is slaughtered. Ooh, this sounds great. I'm really excited for this. I've seen really good reviews for it so far. Like the people who've already read it in the UK, they all seem to really like it. The God of Indians by Jacqueline Holland. Colette Lessange is a lonely artist who heads an elite fine arts school for children in upstate New York. Her youthful beauty masks the dark truth of her life. She has endured centuries of turmoil and heartache in the wake of her grandfather's long-ago decision to make her immortal, like himself. Now, in 1984, Colette finds her life upended by the arrival of a gifted child from a troubled home, the return of a stalking presence from her past, and her own mysteriously growing hunger. Ooh, sounds great, you guys. Her Lost Words, a novel of Mary Wollstonecraft and Mary Shelley. Set in 1792, as a child, Mary Wollstonecraft longed to disappear during her father's violent rages. Instead, she transforms herself into the radical author of the landmark volume of Vindication of the Rights of Women, in which she dares to propose that women are equal to men. From conservative England to the blood-drenched streets of revolutionary France, Mary refuses to bow to society's conventions and instead supports herself with her pen until an illicit love affair challenges her every belief about romance and marriage. When she gives birth to a daughter and is stricken with childbed fever, Mary fears it will be her many critics who recount her life's extraordinary odyssey. And then we skip ahead to 1815. The daughter of infamous political philosopher Mary Wollstonecraft, passionate Mary Shelley, learned to read by tracing the letters of her mother's tombstone. As a young woman, she desperately misses her mother's guidance, especially following her scandalous elopement with dashing poet Percy Shelley. Mary struggles to balance an ever-complicated marriage with motherhood while nursing twin hopes that she might write something of her own one day and also discover the truth of her mother's unconventional life. Mary's journey will unlock her mother's secrets, all while leading to her own destiny as the groundbreaking author of Frankenstein. Yes. And this sounds like such a great novel, you know, kind of telling both the points of view of Mary Wollstonecraft and Mary Shelley and whatnot, and it kind of the parallels, weirdly enough, you know, some of the interesting parallels there. So yeah, I can't wait to get this. The Last Heir to Blackwood Library by Hester Fox. With the stroke of the pen, 23-year-old Ivy Radcliffe becomes Lady Hayworth, owner of a sprawling estate on the Yorkshire moors. Ivy has never heard of Blackwood Abbey, or of the ancient bloodline from which she's descended. Why, with nothing to keep her in London since losing her brother in the Great War, she warily makes her way to her new home. The abbey is foreboding, the servants reserved and suspicious, but there is a treasure waiting behind locked doors. A magnificent library. Despite cryptic warnings from the staff, Ivy feels irresistibly drawn to its dusty shelves, where familiar works mingle with strange esoteric texts. And she senses something else in the library too, a presence that seems to have a will of its own. Oh my god, this sounds like a gothic sort of novel, gothic vibes. I'm here for it, you guys. And creepy, dusty libraries? Yes. Martha by Susan Holloway Scott. When 18-year-old Martha Dandridge marries Daniel Park Custis, all agree she has done remarkably well to fall in love with the land, with and land one of the wealthiest men in the Virginia colony. Their union is a happy one until, after 7 years and 4 children, Daniel dies suddenly. Resilient and beautiful, Martha is soon courted by other men and becomes engaged to a military hero, Colonel George Washington. The newlyweds' mutual affection and attraction is obvious to all. At 26, George is handsome, athletic, and over a foot taller than petite Martha. She and her 2 surviving children move to Mount Vernon, where Martha's fortune enables George to improve his estate and establish himself as a political power. Where once Martha envisioned a sedate life as a planter's wife, now a very different future beckons. Yes. Marvelous by Molly Greeley. 1547. Pedro Gonçalves, we'll call him Pedro. He's a young boy living on the island of Tenerife, something like that. He understands that he is different from the other children in his village. He is mercilessly ridiculed for the shiny layer of hair covering his body from head to toe. When he is kidnapped by When he is kidnapped off the beach near his home, he finds himself delivered by a slave broker into the dangerous and glamorous world of France's royal court. There, Monsieur Sauvage, as he is known, learns French literature and sword fighting, becoming an attendant to the French king Henry II, and a particular favorite of his queen, the formidable Catherine de' Medici. Queen Catherine considers herself a collector of unusual people and is fascinated by Pedro and determined to find him a bride. Catherine D'Aubray is a beautiful 18-year-old girl whose merchant father has fallen on hard times and offers up his daughter to Queen Catherine. The queen will pay his debts, and his daughter will marry Monsieur Sauvage. Catherine meets Pedro for the first time on their wedding day. Barely recovered from the shock of her father's betrayal, she soon finds herself christened Madame Sauvage by the new courtiers, and must learn to navigate the strange new world and the unusual man who is now her husband. Oh, this sounds so good, you guys. This sounds super intriguing. I love anything kind of set during this time period with Catherine de' Medici. This should be really intriguing, you guys. And you know what? I just glanced down at this Goodreads synopsis really quick, and it says that this is a reimagining of the world's most beloved fairy tales. Like, you know, now that I'm thinking about the plot, it almost has like a Beauty and the Beast sort of feel to it. Huh. Okay, I'm definitely here for it. The Mitford Affair by Marie Benedict. Between the world wars, the 6 Mitford sisters dominate the English political, literary, and social scenes. Though they've weathered scandals before, the family falls into disarray when Diana divorces her husband to marry a fascist leader, and Unity follows her sister's lead, inciting rumors that she becomes Hitler's own mistress. Oh my god, there's a lot of drama here already, you guys. Novelist Nancy Mitford is the only member of her family to keep in touch with Diana and Unity after their desertion. So it falls to her to act when her sisters become spies for the Nazi party. Dear God. Probing the torrid political climate of World War II and the ways that sensible people can be sucked into radical action, the Mitford Affair follows Nancy's valiant efforts to end the war and the cost of placing loyalty to her country above loyalty to her family. Oh my god, this sounds so good. Marie Benedict always has such wonderful stories to share, and I've never heard about all this with the Mitford, I guess the Mitford sisters. I've always heard of the Mitford sisters by name, but yeah, I didn't know them like by name, like their own individuals' names and whatnot, and personal stories and whatnot, so this sounds so cool. The Porcelain Moon by Janie Chang. France, 1918. In the final days of the First World War, First World War, a young Chinese woman, Pauline Ding, runs away from her uncle's home in Paris to evade a marriage being arranged for her in Shanghai. To prevent the union, she needs the help of her cousin Theo, who is working as a translator for the Chinese Labor Corps in the French countryside. In the town, I'm not going to try to pronounce that name, in some random town in France, it looks like, a lady named Camille is planning her escape from an abusive marriage and to end a love affair that can no longer continue. When Camille offers Pauline room for her stay, the two women become friends, but it's not long before Pauline uncovers a perilous secret that Camille has been hiding from her. As their dangerous situation escalates, the two women are forced to make a terrible decision that will bind them together for the rest of their lives. Ooh. Queen of Thieves by Beezy Marsh. London, 1946. The city struggles to rebuild itself after the devastation of the Blitz. Food is rationed, good jobs are scarce, and even the most honest families are forced to take a bit of crooked just to survive. Alice Diamond, the Queen of Thieves, rules over her all-female gang with a bejeweled fist. Her hoisters are expert shoplifters, the scourge of London's upscale boutiques and department stores. Their lucrative business, stealing and fencing luxury goods, always carries the threat of violence. Alice packs a razor and has been known to use her heavy rows of diamond rings like brass knuckles. Young Nell is a teenager from the slums, hiding a secret pregnancy and facing a desperately uncertain future when Alice takes her under her wing. Before long, Nell is experiencing all the dangers and glamorous trappings that come with this underworld existence. Alice wants Nell to be a useful weapon in her ongoing war against the crime boss Billy Sullivan's gang of rival thieves, but Nell has a hidden agenda of her own and is not to be underestimated. The more she is manipulated by both Alice and Billy, the more her hunger for revenge grows. Ooh, Lady Thieves, yes. The Shadow of Perseus by Claire Haywood. I'm not sure how this name is pronounced. Is it Dana or Denai? I'm not quite sure. I'm going to say Dana. Banished from her homeland thanks to a prophecy foretelling that her unborn child would one day cause the death of her father, the king of Argos, Dana finds herself stranded, pregnant, and alone in a remote fishing village. It's a harsh new world for a young woman who grew up as a coddled princess, and forging a new life for herself and for her young son, Perseus, will be the hardest thing she's ever done. Medusa. As a member of a reclusive band of women who live deep in the woods, known as the Gorgons, Medusa has eschewed all contact with the outside world. That is, until the day she finds an injured boy named Perseus in the forest. Andromeda. When a harsh sandstorm threatens to destroy her nomadic desert tribe's way of life, Andromeda knows that a sacrifice will be required to appease the gods and end the storms. But when a forceful young Perseus interferes, Andromeda's life is set on an entirely new path. As Perseus becomes increasingly obsessed with the promise of his own destiny, his heroic journey casts a shadow of violence and destruction across all three women's lives. But even as he tries to silence them, the women may find that reclaiming their voices is their only hope for lifting themselves into a better future. Ooh, I'm definitely intrigued with the Medusa part of the story. Silent Came the Monster, a novel of the 1960 Jersey Shore shark attacks by Amy Hill Hearth. It's July 1916, a time when little is known about ocean creatures, and swimming in the sea is a relatively new pastime. Americans up and down the East Coast are shocked and mystified by the swimmer's death. Little do they know that this is only the beginning. A prominent surgeon at the shore, Dr. Halsey, after examining the wounds of the first victim, is the only person who believes that the creature is a shark and that it will strike again. But the public, as well as the authorities, and even those who witnessed the attacks, don't believe him. Dr. Halsey finds himself fighting widespread confusion, conspiracy theories, defiance, and outright denial of the shark. Seeking the input of commercial fishermen, Dr. Halsey learns that they have long been concerned about a creature they call the beast. The local Native Americans have their own beliefs as well. The shark attacks occur in an already fraught time. A brutal war rages in Europe, and Americans are divided about becoming involved. Meanwhile, an unprecedented outbreak of infantile paralysis, or polio, creates widespread panic. Into this scenario, the sea monster arrives. But what is it? Theories range from a huge mackerel to a giant sea turtle, or even a German submarine. The story of the 1960 Jersey Shore shark, believed to be a great white, changed the way Americans think of the seashore, reminding us once again that nature plays by its own rules. You guys, I'm actually really ridiculously excited about this book because you know me, I love historical fiction. This book, there's just something that is just so absolutely refreshingly unique. I have never heard about this, taking place in 1916 with a bunch of shark attacks and whatnot. I have never heard about this, and I find it really incredibly fascinating. It just sounds so good. It seriously sounds so good. And yeah, this wonderful historical backdrop, like it said, it's taking place in World War I is going on in Europe, and kind of the whole thing, should America even be involved? And yeah, there's the whole thing, polio is starting. Yeah, going to the beach has become a new pastime in America. Everything about this plot synopsis is really just grabbing me and intriguing me. So I am definitely picking this book up, you guys. The Gifts by Liz Hyder. October 1840. A young woman staggers alone through a forest in the English countryside as a huge pair of impossible wings rip themselves from her shoulders. Dear God. In London, rumors of a fallen angel cause a frenzy across the city, and a surgeon desperate for fame and fortune finds himself in the grips of a dangerous obsession, one that will place the women he seeks in the most terrible danger. Ooh. There's kind of a bit of like some sort of magical realism involved in this book. Sounds really great. The Magician's Daughter by H.G. Perry. And it says this is set in 1912. Orphaned in a shipwreck as a baby, Biddy grew up on grew up on High Brazil, a legendary island off the coast of Ireland, hidden by magic and glimpsed by rare travelers who return with stories of wild black rabbits and a lone magician in a castle. To Biddy, the island is her home, a place of ancient trees and sea salt air and mysteries. And the magician Rowan is her guardian. She loves both, but as her 17th birthday approaches, she is stifled by her solitude and frustrated by Rowan's refusal to let her leave. He himself leaves almost every night, transforming into a raven and flying to the mainland, and never tells her where he goes or why. One night, Rowan fails to come home from his mysterious travels. When Biddy ventures into his nightmares to rescue him, she learns not only where he goes every night, but the terrible things that happened in the last days of magic that caused Rowan to flee to High Brazil. Rowan has powerful enemies who threaten the safety of the island. Biddy's determination to protect her home and her guardian takes her away from the safety of High Brazil to the poor houses of Whitechapel, a secret castle beneath London streets, the ruins of an ancient civilization, and finally to a desperate chance to restore lost magic. But the closer she comes to answers, the more she comes to question everything she has ever believed about Rowan, her origins, and the cost of bringing magic back into the world. Yes, this sounds so great. You guys, I definitely cannot wait for this. Two Wars and a Wedding by Lauren Willig, September 1896. As an aspiring archaeologist, Smith College graduate Betsy Hayes travels to Athens, desperate to break into a very male-dominated field and find work at some of the world's most famous excavation sites. In the midst of the heat and dust of Greece, she finds an unlikely ally in philanthropist Charles, Baron de Robecourt, one of the few men who takes her academic passion seriously. But when a simmering conflict between Greece and Turkey erupts into open warfare, Betsy's archaeological sites become battlefields, and she falls into the grim and heroic task of nursing the wounded. As the world around her is irrevocably changed, Betsy finds her heart pulled in multiple directions. Ooh, yes, this sounds so good, you guys. The Woman with the Cure by Lynn Colan. In 1940s and 50s America, polio is as dreaded as the atomic bomb. No one's life is untouched by the disease that kills or paralyzes its victims, particularly children. Outbreaks of the virus across the country regularly put American cities in lockdown. Some of the world's best minds are engaged in the race to find a vaccine. The man who succeeds will be a god. But Dorothy Hortsman is not focused on beating her colleagues to the vaccine. She just wants the world to have a cure. Applying the same determination that lifted her from her humble background as the daughter of immigrants to becoming a doctor, often the only woman in the room, she hunts down the monster where it lurks, in the blood. Ooh, sounds good. This sounds really good to you guys. This almost sounds like a book like Marie Benedict would write, so I'm definitely probably going to pick this up too. So you guys, that is it for all the recommendations I have for you guys for the historical fiction genre. Just a scattering of books here that are supposed to be released from January to June of 2023. In the comments below, are you guys looking forward to any of the books that I have listed here? Have you heard of any of them? Or maybe I left out a book on this list that you're looking forward to. Definitely let me know, because I will probably add it to my list. So that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you like this video, you may like these other videos. Bye, guys.